So this is what I was going to start with this, but just to get you involved, but he's just a regular character here. So this is what Clippy looked like in '95, was in this little box. They were combined to little boxes, limitations of the development at the time. The 2000 version, he's actually outside the box and has a lot more interaction. So my name is Keith Sink. I was a technical editor at Microsoft and worked on the AI for Microsoft Word. And I'll explain how I got into that. Just a little bit about me. I was with Microsoft for about 3.5 years as a product support engineer. Basically means I was on the phone answering calls about Microsoft Word and a couple other products. And we had 3 facilities. One was in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I was. And then there's Las Colinas was the one that took over after that, took over the middle time zones. And then Bellevue, Washington was the one that took over the final time zones for the day. I've got 25 years in the computer software industry, and I retired about 7 years ago as a data scientist. I'm also a game developer, vintage computer collector, one of the reasons I'm here, and author. So we're doing phone support, and I was supporting Microsoft version 1, which we could not run version 1. We had to actually, we had a set of papers. And so when somebody called up with a problem, and about once every 6 months, you get somebody that's still running Microsoft Word 1. This was after Word 6 was out. And you'd find somebody that had Word 1, and you'd have to use this sheet of papers and troubleshoot it off of a sheet of papers because we couldn't install it. 2.0 was still popular at the time. And when I was there, 6.0 had just come out, and that's one of the reasons I got hired. And I ended up working on the PC, and then eventually supported the Mac version as well. I was also, when Windows 95 came out, we had overflow. So I took over some overflow and was actually having to support my Windows 95. And the most terrifying thing was hearing about the registry. And if any of you remember Windows 95, they would tell you that you could really destroy somebody's computer by messing up their registry. So we were terrified at that point. And I also did PowerPoint, and I did Flight Simulator one time. So Clippy is a character in the Answer Wizard. The Answer Wizard was in Office 95, 97, and 2000. And the reason they wanted an Answer Wizard was, if you think about it, when they shipped products, they would ship them, especially like the Office product would have like 3 binders or 3 books, bound paperback books, and then inserts. And I think it was 24 discs were in Office 95. So if you can imagine, that was a pretty heavy box to ship. And so they wanted to reduce the cost of shipping this stuff by going to help systems. So help systems became very popular, and they were trying to get rid of all the documentation. And nowadays they don't even ship documentation. You get everything online. But back then you didn't have online, so you had to still have it in the software. So that was the big catalyst for why they wanted an Answer Wizard. If anytime anybody has any questions, please stop me. I'm happy to answer any questions. So I was working support for Word, and they had a call up that they wanted somebody to come to Bellevue, Washington.
Question in the back.
Yeah, please.
Just a very quick question. When
Yeah.
you said you were doing support for Microsoft Word 1, was that Word for Windows 1 or the original Mac version?
It was the original, it was the DOS version.
The DOS?
Yeah, the DOS version. And that's why we couldn't, yeah. We were using Windows 3.1.1 was our standard operating system at the time that we were using. So, what I did for Office 97 was I worked on the Word and PowerPoint components, and I provided customizations to the Answer Wizard for those 2 products. And just to be clear, I didn't code the logic for it. I basically trained the character. And I'll explain how that works and how it was done. But there were programmers who, every night we checked in our code into a thing called Slime. that it was still in use through 2015, I heard, at least, at Microsoft, before they started going to Git, if you're familiar with programming. So every night we had to check these CSV Excel files into the system, and they would get migrated into that night's build. And then the next day we would get a build and we would install it, and we had to quote what Microsoft likes to call eating your dog food. So we had to eat the build that was produced the night before, and if anything broke, you were yelled at or ostracized, and then you had to fix it, and then you had to write up any bug reports of anything that you discovered, and hopefully you didn't break anything. So Clippy, the character itself, the animated character itself, is attributed to an artist named Kevin Atterbury. There's some really good videos, and I think I have a link into the slides, to an interview with him on YouTube. And he's also done some stuff in the Seattle Times. I've interviewed him about his work, and because there's kind of been a resurgence with the character over the years. And then the help documents and the code. The help documents were put together mostly by people that were contractors to Microsoft, and there were very few people working on the project that were full-time people, but mostly were contractors. And at the time, contractors was a more desirable position at Microsoft as opposed to being a full-timer, because contractors got paid more, and contractors liked that. Except they didn't get stock options and stuff, and then later there was a lawsuit, and that all stuff started. And then technical editors were people that were basically hired to review help documents and train the office assistant, which is what I'll explain in a minute. So the answer wizard basically worked. The answer wizard is basically all of this data, and then on top of it has these characters. And I'll show you the characters in a minute, but Clippy was one of those actors. They called them actors. So basically what you did is you had an article, and in the article, you basically put together all the possible words that somebody could type. So you're basically thinking out of the box, trying to come together all the possible phrases, words, things like that, and you would create this huge Excel spreadsheet for each particular topic. And then you would basically go, taking a thesaurus by hand, you would basically go through a thesaurus and come up with all the other words, all the synonyms, and then you would basically apply values to all the words. And so if the word or phrase was such a unique thing that it only meant that one article or one of 5 articles were the ones that must be what the person's looking for, like if they said mail merge, and you're like, it's a very distinct phrase, then you would give it a high ranking. So therefore, if they typed that in, it would get bubbled up to the top and that topic would come up, making you get the impression that the AI was intelligent, when actually it wasn't very intelligent. It was just based off of rankings. Common words, every word had to have a value. So common words like and, the, I were always given a value of 1. But sometimes, those words may, in a slight way, be more prolific for certain topics. So they might be given a 5 or something. And then this number was all added up through the software the programmers wrote, and then it would bubble up into what the topics were at the top of his list that he would give you after you typed something. And I think it's he gives you 5, up to 5 topics, and then there's like a see more, and he'll give you more. I think a total of about 10. And it was very much a judgment call. So we were sitting in these offices and just staring at computers all day and testing and testing and testing. So the typical training process was somebody writes a help article, and I wrote a couple help articles, but most of them were written by the contractors. We would edit the articles, and we would sit around and talk about the articles and in kind of like a group session. And then it would be handed to me, since I was doing Word and PowerPoint, to parse the article for a list of words and phrases. And then you had to think out of the box, like how, and this is why they wanted people that were doing support, because they wanted somebody that's had to deal with people on the phone. Like, for example, when I was working on the Macintosh Word, I would get, people would tell me like, you know, I hit the, what was the one? I hit the puppy paw on the keyboard. And I'm like, what's a puppy paw? And they're like, oh, it's that clover thing on the keyboard. And so they would call it a puppy paw. So I'm like, okay. So you learn these little things that the users, you know, tell you, and you kind of pick these things up and start to go, okay, maybe there's other words for these things. So they wanted people with experience in that area, those areas. Then I go through a thesaurus, find additional words or phrases that could be used, and there were lots of them, and make sure they have the same values and so forth. And then for each article, you got to categorize the words and phrases in relationship to the article. So sorry, please go.
So the words that you were categorizing necessarily have to appear in the article.
Well, you would start with the words. That's a good question. You would start with the words that were in the article, and then you would embellish, and then you would go through and do thesaurus, and then you would run it through a committee, and they would be like, well, what about this and what about that? And so you'd add some more, and then that was just the tip of the iceberg. That was the starting process. But yeah, good point. So here's an example. Like mail merge is one of my favorite topics. I was really good with mail merge. And so, for example, mail merge, this topic has 5 articles. If the query included the word mail, or the phrase mail merge in the text window, those 5 articles would bubble up to the top. And then, however, if the query was only the word merge, then it could use those 5, but it may look at other things, like maybe you were trying to insert or paste or something like that, and you didn't know the word paste, so you might say merge. So you had to think about those kind of things too. And then there was a see more link. And this is what he looked like, if you can imagine the offices, the windows behind it. But so he would have the 5 there at the top, and then there's a see more you can click to get more. And he also animates and that kind of thing. And there's a random animation that plays, and each of the characters has their own random animations. So like weighting, you know, in this mail merge example, like I might give a weight of 250 to mail merge. It's rare to give a 255 to something unless there is no possible way that word can be used for anything else. And it's really hard to justify that. Then words like mail, there's topics on mail, maybe integration with Outlook, something like that. And then you go on down and, you know, your list would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words and phrases. Some of the challenges to it were, though, that you would have to adjust the weights of some of your phrases and words relative to other articles, because there was articles always being created. So this was like a year-long process of contents being created, and every time a new document came up, you would have to test where it would come up in the sort. And then you would have to go, oh, that breaks this one. So then you have to go back to old ones and fix those and massage them a little bit, move the numbers around. So it was a constant back and forth. It was a lot of churn. So that's how that worked. So it was a constant back and forth, and you could think you're finished with something and then turn around and here you go again, something else. So this is wait a minute. I think he plays. Does he play? No, he doesn't play. Okay. So one of the things we did, Microsoft had some really interesting things. For example, in the support areas, we had labs in all the support facilities that were just dedicated to monitors and printers. And so we had 2 printers and 2 monitors of every printer and monitor that was ever manufactured for a PC or a Mac. And so if a customer called in and said, hey, I'm using this printer, Word's not printing correctly, this is what's happening, we could go check out the printer, put it on our workstation, and sit there and reproduce their problem, or try to reproduce their problem. And then if we found something, we'd write a documented article about it, and it might get fixed. Most of the time, they didn't get fixed. And Then we actually had a usability lab in Bellevue. And so in Bellevue, they had this usability lab, and I watched 2 of the usability studies on Clippy, and they were quite interesting. Basically, Microsoft would offer free software or compensation for you to be able to participate, and they still do that today with like Xbox games, things like that. They bring people in, new joysticks, all that kind of stuff. And you can, if you're in the Bellevue area, Bellevue or Redmond area, they might call you in to do something like that. The problem was that most participants at this time, Windows 95 had just come out, and most of the participants were still not familiar with, they were still in the DOS world, and a lot of the people we had coming in who had expertise with word processing were WordPerfect people. And WordPerfect was one of the dominating things at the time. And we had taken a lot of the market share with Word 6, and we were put a lot of shortcut keys and so forth in Word 6 that were specific to WordPerfect to kind of take that market share away. And so we were trying to get more and more people, but we wanted people that had been using Word on Windows, but we also wanted people that had WordPerfect experience. And a lot of them were from the DOS world, so they didn't know how to use a mouse. They hadn't learned to play with the cards, the card games and things like that yet, which were originally put in there to teach people how to use a mouse. And so we would introduce Clippy to them in the lab, and we would be behind a two-way mirror or one-way mirror, and we would watch them, and it was particularly frustrating. You almost wanted to bang on the glass because you would watch them, and the person, it was a friend of mine, she was explaining to them, you know, you can ask Clippy questions. You can go over and type in questions. Just click on him. Just click on him. Come on, just click on him. And they didn't understand how to click, and they didn't understand what the mouse was there for, and it was very frustrating at the time. So the use of the mouse and everything was a challenge for people to move on to learning how to use a help system. And so people were still used to using manuals and so forth, so they were a little taken aback about having an assistant. So Clippy was the first character. He's now everybody calls him Clippy now. Dolphin is a character you probably have not seen. He is in the Asian market, particularly Japan and China. Dot was a common one. Not very inventive though. Genius was an unusual one because it had a claymation look, like a claymation animation look, or one of the Silicon Graphics. It may have been done with the Silicon Graphics, I don't know. Power Pup was a popular one, but I'm not sure he was actually, I'll show you a grid in a second showing you where each one fell. Logo was a common one. I hated this one. All it does is spin. It's kind of dumb. It's just really an advertisement for the Office logo. Mother Nature was kind of okay, but again, it didn't really do much. Office Lady was a Chinese one, and I wrote a bug on this one because I found that if you reduced her window to a small size, one of her eyes kind of bugged out like she had been, and it was horrible. It looked like she had been punched or something, like one eye was big. And I cannot reproduce the problem anymore, so I guess they fixed it. Hoverbot was okay. Rocky was very popular. You'll see dogs are popular. But they had to have a cat too, so there was Scribble, which was a weird, you'll notice here he's got like kind of looks like a piece of paper for the body. So he's made up of little patchwork pieces. And then Will, which I don't think anybody really liked Will. But the Dolphin and the Office Lady were specific to the Asian markets. And I'll show you the breakout here. So you see like the English markets did not have the Dolphin or the Office Lady, and they also didn't have Rocky, but I think Rocky appeared in the 2000. He became popular in 2000. And I've talked to a lot of people when I've given this presentation that Rocky was one of their favorite characters. And unfortunately, Rocky was not until later.
I think it was in Greetings Workshop.
Yeah. There was some overlap in some of those. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say, is that the same dog for Microsoft Bob?
It could be, yes. There was some reuse of that. They actually had I was in building 17, but in 16, there was 16, 17, and 18 were some of the older buildings. They're gone now. But in 16, I believe, was where the animation was developed and stuff. And you could walk down the hall and they would have these big, huge posters. And the posters were of characters they were working on for future versions. Some were from Bob, some were Office 97, some were Office 2000. They were just working on them. They weren't released yet. But this is the breakdown of the different ones. It seems like the ones that had the most, or Chinese had the Chinese versions had the most characters. Well, actually, they didn't have Office Lady. Office Lady was Japanese and Korean is actually who she was. Yeah. And you'll see that logo was in all of them because you got to advertise your product. So that's in all of them. But for some reason, they didn't want to put the Japanese and Czech, Danish, and Korean didn't get Mother Nature for some reason. I don't know.
What's the rhyme or reason beside it? Was it like, legal issues or?
No, it wasn't legal issues. It was cultural issues. Mostly, we had a team that would review them all and actually tell us, like, in China, they wouldn't really like this character, or they would find it offensive or something. So some of the characters were removed.
Looks like Czech and Danish people are most offensive.
Yeah, I think so. They really got the worst part. They did not get much. But you see Clippies everywhere. Everybody got Clippy.
How is Rocky and Rocco only in 4 regions?
Rocky, he was not available this was 97. He was much more available in 2000. He became...
Okay, so like they expanded it.
Yeah. He was, I think there was, I don't know why they didn't use Rocky. I think a lot of it was they felt like they had Power Pup, and I think they just didn't want to have too many dogs. People would get upset. It's like, well, you got 1 cat and 2 dogs. What's going on? That's not fair. So there was some of that, I'm sure. I don't know the rhyme or reason for a lot of them, but it's just the way it was. A lot of our localization at this time was done in Ireland. So most of the language stuff was done in Ireland. And so we had people that would fly to Ireland every once in a while to work with the localization teams. Easter eggs were very common in Office. If you go on the Wikipedia article out there, they have what the Easter eggs were like. Let's see, Word had a pinball machine. Excel had a flight simulator. Access just had a magic 8-ball. They weren't very inventive on their team. One of my favorites was they would change the loading screens. So every day when you came in and you got your new build, the developers like to change the startup screens. And so one of my favorite was, if you remember the old SNL where they were doing Happy Fun Ball, they would have the list of all the problems with Happy Fun Ball on the front. So that was one of my favorites. I got a printout at home somewhere of it. But the one we liked the most from our team was cast of characters. And if you went into Clippy and you typed whodunit, cast of characters, or the name of somebody who participated in the creation of it, it would actually show you a screen. And let's see. I think this is an animation of it. And you see him animating there. And when you hit search, this little topic called cast of characters would pop up. And it's basically just a help topic. And it would show you this. And it would show you the name of everybody that worked on the project.
I thought it was like a Dune, like almost like a 3D area with like the newer ones. Maybe?
Yeah, and the newer ones, there was one they did Dune kind of thing. Yeah. Doom kind of thing. Yeah. But this was just basically their way to kind of give credit to everybody that worked on the project. So this is how the answer wizard changed over the years. So the answer wizard started out, this is all it was just a little tab on the topics. These are standard topics. Contact, index, and find were very common. And then you would basically type your question in there, and it would give the topics at the bottom. So it was very rudimentary. And then with Office 97, they introduced the answer wizard with an actual character. He or she were confined to a box and small in the corner. And then with Office 2000, you see the one that everybody uses these days when they're making jokes about Clippy and everything. They're using the Office 2000 version, which has a transparent background. So he's kind of a little more free to move around, and he's larger. But he also helps you more than people like. So that was one of the downfalls of him.
It looks like you're creating a presentation. Would you like some help?
Yeah, exactly. So, but Clippy's been used a lot on, like Seth Meyers this week actually had a segment where he actually used Clippy for a quick little thing. So you'll see him on Colbert and other late night shows every once in a while just pop up as the annoying character that he is. I've also seen him in software assistants. They came out with a product later that actually allowed you to, and I worked on a project with another company that allowed you to use other ones, like there's a genie. You've probably seen this purple genie. And you could basically create your own help systems and integrate that and have your own answer wizard in your software. So it was designed for people to be able to use their own kind of characters. I've also seen in some 3D printing software I use for 3D printing. They actually have a character that looks like Clippy. So he's kind of made his way into a lot of different things out there. These are my opinions on why the answer wizard kind of failed and eventually went away. At least when it got to 2000, if you left him alone for too long, he started to worry. He appeared to kind of start to worry about what are you doing, and started offering you suggestions and most of them were way off, and just became annoying. That's where he started getting the reputation of being an annoying character. Sometimes he wasn't always correct, so sometimes he'd offer things like, "Are you creating a PowerPoint presentation?" And you may not even be doing that. So you might get pretty ticked off and just want to close him down. So you go up there and shut him down. And I think in the 2000 version, they may have shut him down by default, or later versions, they shut him down by default because he was irritating people.
2003 when they shut that by default.
Yeah, so before it was like he was always there because they wanted to show him off. And then eventually they were like, well, we've paid for this project. We better keep him, but let's keep him in the back.
Copilot isn't annoying.
What's that?
I said at least Copilot isn't annoying.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I think it was in 2000, they started where it was automated, so you could actually click on a link. Instead of it taking you to a topic, it would actually take you to that section, which is kind of helpful. And a lot of systems do that today. Like sometimes you don't want to go finding under the menu a certain thing. You just want to go, take me to this, and it will just take you to it. But at the time, people didn't really like that. Now people are kind of used to it. And the problem we learned with the usability labs and other things, and the kind of the hive mind at Microsoft was they were always 2 versions ahead. And so they were trying to direct people to things like later versions of Office had this ribbon thing, which I hated it because I was used to the way things were done. But they were always innovating and changing and moving people in directions they felt that they would be in 5 or 10 years. And so sometimes they would be moving a little faster than people were willing to adapt. And eventually they would be right in many cases, but people did not like to, especially like Office, versions of Office after about 97 or 2000 didn't really have any new features. They were basically the same thing. You're buying a new piece of software that basically does the same thing. So that started turning people off, I think. But
There's also that DocX, SLX.
yeah, and the different formats and stuff, and they're still supporting really old formats. We had techniques we would deal with old documents and stuff back in the day, and I still remember a lot of them. but I can recover files for people these
Yeah,
days.
I was in college when that format shift happened, and there was a number of times professors would give out an assignment, and no one could open it because it was in the new format, and everybody had
Right.
2003 still.
Yeah, and that was very common. So, then everybody would start saving in RTF format, which is much more common and could be opened by a lot of different things. So this is a link to the story behind Microsoft's iconic assistant. This is the story of the gentleman I told you about who made Clippy. It's an interview with him, and this is an article they also produced in the Seattle Met, actually. And here's how to contact me. This is my websites you can find me on. And this is my email address if anybody wants to send me questions or anything or ask more about the project. And do we have any questions? I'm sorry? Yep. That one? Does anybody have any questions?
You think Clippy was ahead of his time?
Yeah, probably, but he's in this generation with AI and much better systems, he would probably do a lot better.
Same idea, right?
Yeah, same idea.
Accustomed to saying.
People ask me about AI because I, as a data scientist, I did some AI too. And one of the things is they ask me about AI and stuff, and I just tell them it's like AI is just basically what I did, ranking things, and then you're teaching a large database to do this kind of thing, and then it's trying to learn from it, and then you go back and you correct it, and you go back and correct it. And it's the same, it's just a step above, in the rudimentary sense, it's just a step above that, but you've got more processing power now. Yeah.
So it could be still here in the 2020s.
He made a resurgence a couple years back, but I haven't seen anything in a while. Yeah. I don't know.
To your earlier, so kind of two questions. Was Clippy or Clippit in any way bound into the format, the .hlp format that Microsoft trashed about 8 years ago and replaced?
Getting rid of the help system. They got rid of the help systems. And that killed, if you install Office, you can install Office 95 and 97. I've tried it on modern systems, and it will run and everything, but the help system is destroyed. They basically, I think that's what you're talking about. They took that out, and I don't know why, but it may have been a security problem. Yeah.
Did they ever develop I'm not overusing the word developer now. Did they ever create a developer's toolkit to create actors and animate them and things like that?
The system I was talking about where they had a free package that you could get and you could use it in your own software to link in and basically create your own help systems and your own kind of answer wizard kind of things. It rudimentarily scanned the topics and would build the list of words. And I don't think you could create, I don't remember seeing anything that actually allowed you to create the actors, but you could buy third-party actors. There were companies there was at least one company that made third-party actors that you could buy.
Reverse engineered the format of the...
No, I think they may have gotten the permission from Microsoft. I don't think they reversed engineer. I think they got, it was kind of one of those where we give you the free one and you got 5 characters. And by the way, if you want more characters, hey, this company sells really nice, unique ones that on your software might want the ability to offer help and have it a little more snazzy kind of thing.
Their own company logo.
Yeah, exactly. Their own company logo. But animation's wasn't cheap back then, and you didn't quite have all the stuff. And some of this stuff was cell animation kind of thing. And Microsoft at the time was there was a game called Never Ending or something like that, but it was claymation. And that was really popular back there. And they had a whole team just working on this game that was completely claymation. So every possible way you moved had to be animated. And I can't remember the exact name of it, but they did 1 or 2 games like that, and those cost a fortune to make. That's it. The Neverhood. Yeah. It was a great game, but it was like everything had to be animated. Yeah.
What's Piddle Pop?
Oh, Piddle Pup's just a term. When I was younger, my first job, they called people that were newbies Piddle Pups. So I registered the domain. So it's mine now. So,
That's what we did back then.
yeah.
I will share with you, I didn't realize I was part of a trend, but as a DOS user.
Yeah.
And frequently an early adopter of technology, but mice and GUIs came late to our household, so I was that guy.
Okay.
But my wife has fond memories of Clippy because she got an office job that she was maybe not entirely qualified for. And Clippy helped her through the hard times.
Well, I hope it was Word she was working with, so I'll be great for that. Yeah. So I just worked on the middle one. And after that, I went off. I wanted to be a programmer, and there wasn't many opportunities to be a programmer at Microsoft unless you were a C++ developer or had a college degree in that. And my degree is in criminal justice. So I came from a criminal justice background, but took some computer courses and ended up working in the .com era and working for a couple .com companies and became a programmer that way. So there's multiple paths.
So in that, did you ever ask the animators to have Clippy morph into a set of characters?
No, they were a lot of fun though. And I'll tell you a little tip. If you have Office 95 or 97, or sorry, 97 or 2000, and you can find the install discs for the other versions, you can pull the actors off those discs and plop them into your help system, and you'll access all the characters. So that's how I got the characters, because the English versions don't have the dolphin or the office lady, but you can get them. Mm-hmm. She had the whole thing about, in Japan where they give you the business card where they hand it with both hands. She does that, and she takes something to the printer and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I heard that Comic Sans was originally designed for one of these actors. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not heard anything about that.
That's Microsoft Bob.
Yeah. I think that's probably,
Line up on that in Wikipedia.
yeah.
Windows used to have a dog for the Finder, which looks different than these. So they came from, I'm assuming, from totally different organizations within the organization.
Yeah, I think they contracted out all the artwork, the individual artist to do the different pieces. And I know they got some from Bob and other failed projects. It was not uncommon at Microsoft to have multiple projects going at the same time. And some project may fail or be killed, and they would take pieces from it. Like, for example, when Outlook came out, the first versions of Outlook, there was, I think its code name was Ren at the time. And there was Outlook, and there was another one. I can't remember what it was. And both of them were very popular in Microsoft. And then it was a war to see which one came out on the top. And then one rose to the top, and the other one was killed. But they were both, really good technologies. And I had friends that worked on both teams. So, yes.
Were you surprised that there was a lot of people that didn't like the helper, or were you?
I was, because the whole controversy about Clippy and everything didn't really happen until 2000, and I had already left. And on my resume, I talked about I worked on the Answer Wizard. I didn't mention Clippy. I just said the Answer Wizard because that's what we called it. And everything was fine for a couple of years, and then suddenly there was a downfall on Clippy and everything. And so I was really surprised. And so because of that, I kind of downplayed my involvement after that. By then I had like 3 or 4 jobs since then. So it was still on the bottom of my resume. So I may just say, well, yeah, I did office support. Like I didn't work on anything else, but yeah. But then he came back, and there's a resurgence in the past years, and there's T-shirts now, and people are, I've run into a lot of people have very fond memories of Clippy. Some people still don't like him, but so it's I felt it was about time to talk about the process and how
It's kind of the thing you love to.
he is. Yes, very much so. Very much so.
You don't have to drink it like, new Coke, so that's like probably nostalgia speaking.
Yes, exactly. I think the whole Stranger Things, when it came out, and everybody was like, what was the 80s and 90s like, and stuff like that, has kind of brought a resurgence of people wanting to know about those times, and what were the kind of icons. Those are. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So aside from Clippy and such, what areas of retro computing are you interested in?
Oh, I like the 8-bit stuff. Amiga 500s are still my favorite machines, and TRS-80s, Model 1s and Model 3s. I was not a Commodore 64 person, but now I'm a Commodore 64 person because I didn't grow up with them. My first computer was I first learned to program on a Model 1 TRS-80, so I have a very soft spot for that. And then my first home computer was a TI-99, and I still love a TI-99. So, yeah. So I think we're finished recording. Thank you.